So we've had some news in the Man City APT case this week. The hearing's now set to take place in mid-October. When are we likely to hear the verdict in that case?
Well, I think if you look at what happened last time when we had an APT hearing of 2 weeks, 2 weeks does tend to suggest that there's a fairly detailed set of arguments that are going to be heard, and which is a bit of a surprise. I would have thought that it would have been a bit quicker, just because the panel will be so familiar with the issues that they wouldn't need quite so long. But if it is 2 weeks, then I think we can probably again expect it to take maybe a couple of months before we get a decision. So I think, in December sometime, probably, maybe even just slipping over into January, there will then be a question of whether it will be the whole decision or whether, like APT1, as it's become known, they'll need to kind of go back for some additional determinations on what the findings of the first hearing means for the overall position in terms of being null and void. I mean, I think it's a crazy situation that this could feasibly stretch on to 2026, and I think it seems to me that the parties really need to get around a table and negotiate something, because I don't think they're that far apart, and to stretch it out for another into next year just seems to be crazy. And you also have the situation, if this goes against the Premier League, let's say it goes against the Premier League in December, we may be sitting in a situation where there have been no valid APT rules since November 2024. That's going to cause all sorts of issues, because it's going to mean that anything that is in the process now being adjudicated on the APT rules as they are now effectively goes back to the drawing board or didn't need any approval. So it's going to be fairly chaotic. And remember, this was said to be the expedited version. If you see the announcement that is made by the Premier League about this next phase of the APT discussions and case, they appointed the same panel because they felt that would expedite things. So this is the accelerated version. Part of it is just the problem of getting availability for barristers and the way that process works. Not a lot you can do about it. City, even with the situation dragging on to October, are going to have to use a different barrister for the competition specialty. And of course, all sorts of legal disputes take a long time. It's just the way it works, as we know from the other cases. For those people not familiar with the legal industry, even if you only watch the football cases, you can see how long they take. So I think it just needs. The thing I struggle with is why it's so difficult for City, the Premier League, and any other interested parties who want to represent themselves in the discussions to get around a table and negotiate something that works for all of them. They're not that far apart, so it's very surprising to me. But so far, it looks like they can't do that.
Would you not think the Premier League, City and the other clubs really as well would want to have a season maybe without legal issues going on? It feels like the last couple of seasons that we've had a lot of legal talk going on behind the scenes and a lot of different cases. Do you think they're behind them?
Well, yeah, but I don't think we're any closer to that. You've got, the Chelsea situation, and I say situations in plural, which continue to, continue to be challenges, I think, for the Premier League. They've got to figure out how they get. Well, I'm sure we'll talk later about some of the Chelsea situations, but clearly the one thing they've got to do is approve the sale of the women's team. That will be under the APT rules. We don't know what those APT rules actually are. We don't know whether they're actually valid. or void. And we won't know whether they are, possibly until 2026, as we've just said. It's just a mess. And so I don't see, and of course you've got the City situation. We still don't have the decision, and then what happens in terms of sanction, and then what happens, if any, and then what happens in terms of appeal, if any. These are tricky situations. And then on top of that, you've got the Leicester situation, where we have very little information, but it appears that the Leicester case is being appealed. So I don't see it changing anytime soon. But I agree with you. I mean, it's been, for a while, the league has needed really to start to reduce the level of conflict between its teams, but it's not yet able to do that.
Mm. There's been some conflict at Man City between the club and the fans regarding the ticketing situation lately. They did announce a freeze for next season, but now it's emerged that they're increasing the number of game season ticket holders must utilise the ticket from 14 to 16 for next season. What are your thoughts on that? Do you understand both sides of the argument really on this one?
Well, it's going to be a minimum of 10 really, because you're able to transfer them over. Of course you understand the frustration. I think there'll be a reversal of the rule that you've got to personally attend 10. Because it just doesn't fit with modern society, to be honest with you. Especially you've got a club that's got lots of fans that are coming from outside of Manchester to go to the games. So, I personally know lots of people who live in London and go to those games. And it's not always possible to go to 10 in the way the modern world works, because if you just look at the next couple of weeks, City have got, they had Aston Villa was Tuesday night. There's no train after that game back to London, for example, or back south. So you have to stay over if you're going to watch that game. They're playing Bournemouth on a Sunday night. Again, you can't get back. They're playing Wolves on a Friday night. Again, can't get. This is just the next 3 home games, or the last 3 home games, right? As an example, we know the way the games are moving around in the schedule the whole time. It's just not. It's not the real world to expect people to have to go to 10 of those games, and to commit to it. Now they may want to, but it's just not possible, because the club can't even tell them when the games are going to be when they buy the season ticket. So. You know almost certainly that maybe 14 of the games are going to move in terms of time and date. So I think they'll have to reverse and U-turn on that. I can't see how it can be workable. I think the other issues are general issues with football and the Premier League, and it's getting to the point where I think it's hitting its price elasticity limit, and I think supply and demand will, as it always does, supply and demand will start to impact the decisions that clubs have to take, because it's not just, City had lots of empty seats on Tuesday night against Aston Villa because the game obviously wasn't meant to be on a Tuesday night, and partly because of the reasons I've said. I had a ticket myself, a very, very expensive ticket actually that I bought a while ago, but I didn't go. I couldn't, I didn't get myself organised enough to get the refund that I could have got a few weeks ago. Very hard to resell the ticket. So I wasn't alone, but lots of people. I know lots of other people who weren't there. And if you had a look at Arsenal and look at the availability to be able to go to the Arsenal game against Crystal Palace, there's a very, very serious issue, and I think football is going to start to see the limits of what they can charge and where demand is, and that doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if it's Arsenal, City, I mean, there may be one or two clubs. Maybe Liverpool are an outlier. I don't know. But there's going to be very few of those outliers, and ultimately the clubs will end up having to drop the prices, especially because they're all building extra stands and extra capacity. So all you're going to do here is start to increase supply, whilst demand is either at best flat. So all that's going to happen is you're going to have to reduce the prices. It's just going to happen, and that's quite apart from the issue that they've got in terms of atmosphere and the types of fan who you're introducing into the mix. So none of these things are just Manchester City issues. They're issues that are going to affect every club.